Did all you lovely people have a good snack? Did you satisfy the plant-like part of your soul? I hope so. Let's go back to Aristotle. Now, so far we've seen that Aristotle says that the chief good of human life is happiness, and that the purpose, that's the purpose that all human activity ultimately seeks is happiness. And Aristotle says that human happiness is an activity that comes from the proper functioning of our soul. And the proper functioning of the human soul is seen when those aspects that we saw conform to excellence. Especially, again, the kind of executive part gives us, again, the intellectual excellences, and then the excellences of character that will come from cultivating that kind of subservient part of our soul. So that's the idea. So again, the subservient part is that part based on our desires, emotions, appetites. But the good news is those things can listen to and be guided by reason. And again, the associated excellences there are those excellences of character. And that's what the majority of book 2 of the Nicomachean Ethics is about, is really just slowly developing. And it's like a really slow burn towards we finally get this definition of excellence of character. And this comes on page 12. So if you jump to page 12 there, right at the top there, you'll see Aristotle's definition of excellence of character. Excellence then is a disposition issuing in decisions depending on intermediacy of the kind relative to us, this being determined by rational prescription and in the way in which the wise person would determine it. So now we can look at that definition. I think there's about 5 things going on in that definition. It's an interesting one. So let's look at what these 5 things are, because Aristotle is saying that excellence of character is 1, a disposition, 2, issuing in decisions or choice, 3, in an intermediate between 2 bad states or extremes, 4, relative to us, and 5, determined by a rational or correct prescription. Now in this video, I'm just going to talk about the first 2 of those things. How, that is how excellence of character is a disposition and about choice, about decisions. So how is excellence of character a disposition? Well, Aristotle makes this weird argument. This is in chapter 5. I think it's on pages 9 and 10. It's a kind of a weird little argument he makes there. Because up to that point in book 2, there Aristotle has been connecting excellence of character with emotion. Because again, excellences concern our emotions, desires, appetites. And so in chapter 5 there, Aristotle wants to kind of specify this connection between emotions and their associated excellences, those excellences of character. Now, first, Aristotle rejects excellence itself as being an emotion, or as he says, an affection. An affection? Is that right? An emotion is just again, recall, an emotion is just a state we find ourselves in. And sometimes we're in that state without our choice. Sometimes you're just angry, right? We don't always control when we are angry. It can happen. But Aristotle notes, anyone can have an emotion. So having an emotion is hardly an excellence. Again, excellence has been continually understood as something that's been cultivated, right? Something that's been improved upon. And you don't really cultivate having anger. Anger is just natural. You will find yourself in it whether you want to or not often. But what you can cultivate, as we've seen already, is how you handle anger. So the emotion itself, like anger, that isn't an excellence of character. No, what's an excellence is going to be something about how you handle that emotion. Because it's going to be, for Aristotle, about handling that emotion like anger, say, in the right way. Now, second, Aristotle rejects excellence as being a capacity for emotion. Because once again, everyone has these capacities for the emotions. So there's nothing excellent or remarkable about just having a capacity. And again, having a capacity isn't based on a choice either, right? It's just something, you have these capacities by the virtue of being human. You all have the capacity to be angry. That's just by virtue of being human. Now, it might be slightly different for different people, but as humans, we all have a capacity of some kind to experience these emotions. There's nothing excellent about it, and you didn't choose whether or not to have that capacity. It's something that you just have by virtue of being human. So Aristotle is saying here is that excellence of character is not the emotions. Excellence of character is not the capacity to have emotions. No, Aristotle says instead is that it's a disposition. Excellence of character is a disposition. And by disposition, Aristotle means something like a habit. And so, well, what does it mean to have what does it mean to say that excellence of character is a disposition or a habit? Now, based on what Aristotle actually says there, is that a disposition or a habit may be thought of as a developed capacity. And when you think about it, yeah, a habit, when we talk about habits, is just a capacity or something that you've developed, presumably over time. For instance, just to illustrate, because we're talking about habits connected to emotions, right? For instance, a habit that I've developed, that Professor Gray, has developed, is that when I get angry, I tend to immediately walk out of the room. And I've developed this habit because when I was younger, when I got angry, I would do stupid things, say stupid things, or just do stupid things. And so now I trained myself, and I really did train myself, that when I started feeling angry like that, I would immediately walk out of the room so I could cool down and not do something stupid. And it took me a while to develop that habit for sure. It wasn't like overnight. And I will note that habit does drive my wife crazy because we'll be disagreeing about something. And if I do get kind of angry in that disagreement, I immediately just walk out. I don't even say anything because I know I'll say something stupid as I'm leaving. So I immediately just leave. And so when we first started dating, my wife was really confused about that. The first time I did it, she thought, did he just break up with me? No, Jenny, I didn't. I just needed to go and cool off. Now she knows, though, that when I walk out, she knows I'll come back. I come back. She just knows I need to cool off for a minute because I love my wife and I don't want to say something stupid to her because I love her dearly. And thank God I had that habit by the time I met her because otherwise we wouldn't be married. And we're happy, I hope. I am. Not happy that she's far away right now. But anyway, I'm seeing her in a few weeks. Yay! Anyway, what was I saying? In any case, Aristotle says we all have capacities for emotion. And my example was just about my capacity for anger. But Aristotle says we can develop or cultivate our various emotions and our desires in a way that then will give us greater control over how we handle that emotion or desire. Again, I can't control whether or not I'm going to get angry. I mean, I don't know if anyone can. Maybe some very gifted people can control whether they get angry or not. But what I can control, as I illustrated, is a habit that I've cultivated that's how I respond to that anger. Because when I experience anger, I want to be constructive and not destructive. And Aristotle says, yeah, that's going to be the idea here about a disposition or a habit. An excellence of character is going to be something like that, about how we can influence our appetites, emotions, desires, and things like that, and that make us make these good choices instead of I'll come back to this idea about how we acquire excellence. That'll be the last video of this module. I'll come back to that. In any case, though, we've seen now that that's the first part of Aristotle's definition of excellence of character. And now we've already started to connect it actually to that second part, which is about how our dispositions and habits issue in decisions and choices. Now, I honestly don't have much to say about this. I say that, and I'm probably going to say way too much about it. It's the joke. But I will note that for Aristotle, choice is very important. And this is something we'll also see in the last video in this module about excellence does involve choice. Because after all, happiness is an activity. Happiness is doing well. And Aristotle believes that doing well does involve choice and control. Otherwise, Aristotle would worry that happiness might be some kind of accident, where your actions accidentally look like they conform to excellence. You did the right thing. Whereas Aristotle's, and we'll come back to this idea of choice again in the last video, but what Aristotle says is that happiness is something deliberate. That is, we deliberate about our choices and then we act upon those choices. And so this deliberation ought to contribute to the excellences of our actions. And I think some of you might already be picking up on there seems to be something pretty Kantian about all this. Because recall, Immanuel Kant was all about how our actions must do more than merely conform to our duties. Remember, Immanuel Kant said our actions must be done from duty, right? Now, Aristotle is not Immanuel Kant. And Aristotle is definitely not interested in Kant's idea of duty for duty's sake. But Aristotle agrees that excellence of your character is not an accident, but it's something that's going to be intentional. And so the dispositions or habits Aristotle is interested in, these are habits, dispositions that we can acquire. And I'll tell you about that acquisition in the last video. I should have done it earlier. Oh, well, here we are. But anyway, these habits, these dispositions that we acquire, they will influence your choices, but they'll do so in the right way, Aristotle will say. And so, as I've mentioned a million times already in this video, we all have the capacity for anger. And bad habits would be like the ones where you get angry and punch a hole in the wall. I think we all know people like that. And I hope we all agree there is nothing excellent in that behavior at all. And there's nothing excellent in the behavior of the person who gets angry and punches a hole, because there's no excellence, because that person is literally out of control. There was no choice there. That person who punches holes in the walls is out of control. There's no choice because their emotions are controlling them. The anger is controlling them, whereas the person of excellence, the person with excellence of character, exercises control over the emotion. The person of excellence gets angry, just like any human being gets angry. But the person with excellence of character can then issue a choice about how they're going to respond or process or deal with that anger. Now, of course, Aristotle is very particularistic in the sense that, well, how you actually deal with that anger will vary by the situation, what you're angry about, because sometimes it's good to be angry and go out in the streets and protest. Other times, you might be a little more polite about it, because when I teach conflict resolution, I teach that, when you get angry, because in conflict resolution, you're going to get angry. The person you're dealing with is going to annoy you, and you don't then punch a hole in the wall. Right? That's not the way you deal with anger when you have a conflict with another person. That marriage is going to end in divorce. No. Whereas when you get angry, the person of excellence of character, like say, gets angry at their spouse, will say something along the lines of, what you said was very hurtful to me, and it's making me honestly upset that you would say something about me like that. Now, that person can be very angry saying that. And it's probably going to show in terms of like their facial expressions. But notice how different that is than when you get angry and just swear or punch a hole in the wall. Very different. Because that's the idea, though. Being able to control your emotions in that way, Aristotle says, requires a great deal of cultivation, because you have to create the habit. And habits don't appear overnight. And we'll talk a lot about that in the last video, about how to acquire these habits. But I think that's enough for these first two aspects of this definition of excellence of character. Again, excellence of character is that disposition or habit. And this is going to allow you to make decisions or choices in certain ways. Again, what Aristotle's getting at here is excellence of character is going to somehow involve us being able to have some degree of choice and control when it comes to our desires and emotions. We let the emotions will manifest themselves, but we get to figure out what to do with that rather than let them control us. Okay, that's enough. Let's take another quick break. Then we can come back and talk more about excellence of character. I'll see you back here in a moment.